Allen Lund Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Pushback against separate proposals on speed limiters and automatic emergency braking systems is growing. We'll get into that in another Landline Roundtable discussion as we talk about the big stories of the week, plus remember and honor the life of OOIDA board member Bob Esler, who passed away this past week. A new program is designed to help trucks stop at fewer traffic signals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'll talk with Jennifer Sanders of the North Texas Innovation Alliance. In Iowa, you can adopt, relocate, and use a historic bridge. Brennan Dolan of the Iowa Department of Transportation explains. And finally, it's the story of a Canadian truck driver who wrecked her truck in Pennsylvania, got hit with a DUI, and then was fired by her trucking company. So why did an arbitrator order that company to reinstate her? It's complicated. That's why we're bringing in Felisa McCannon of OOIDA's Drug and Alcohol Testing Consortium to explain. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. Tesla is reaching out its hand to the federal government as it eyes the construction of an electric semi-charging network. The company is asking the Federal Highway Administration for $97 million in funding, but just about a quarter of that would go toward the project itself. The charging route would run from Laredo, Texas, up the southern border out west through Southern California, then up north, finally ending in Fremont, California. Each station would have 8 750-kilowatt chargers specifically designed for Tesla semi-trucks. 4 additional chargers would be compatible with other electric semis at those stops. The application for federal funding came by way of California's South Coast Air Quality Management District. Meanwhile, Tesla is being accused of consumer fraud in a new lawsuit. Several Tesla owners say the company has been grossly over-exaggerating the range estimates of its electric vehicles for years. The suit follows an investigation from Reuters that claims the same thing. The Reuters report cited anonymous sources and industry experts who said the order to use algorithms to give longer, less accurate range numbers came directly from CEO Elon Musk. The class action lawsuit filed in a U.S. district court says Tesla violated California consumer fraud statutes. It claims that Tesla grossly overvalued the estimated distance a vehicle can travel on a single battery charge when selling the vehicles to consumers in an effort to boost sales. A report by the Office of Inspector General says FMCSA failed to conduct compliance reviews of carriers from Mexico in a timely manner. The Inspector General was tasked with looking into whether FMCSA met requirements in authorizing carriers from Mexico to conduct long-haul trucking operations in the United States and whether the agency was monitoring the carriers to ensure they were operating safely. The OIG investigation determined that FMCSA did meet the requirements for cross-border carriers, but that the compliance reviews weren't always conducted on time. Federal regulations require FMCSA to conduct compliance reviews of Mexico-based carriers within 18 months of provisional operating authority being issued. FMCSA blamed the pandemic in part for the issue. The Office of Inspector General made 3 recommendations to improve FMCSA's compliance with the requirements, and according to the report, all of the recommendations have been resolved, but open pending completion of the planned actions. Comments in response to a proposed automatic emergency braking mandate for heavy trucks are stacking up. The total is over 300 comments now, with a month to go before the deadline. And a good number expressed doubt and concerns about the proposal, concerns that are based on real-world experiences. In comments posted to the Federal Register, one trucker said they almost had a crash due to the automatic braking system on their Freightliner, adding it was snowing and icy and that the AEB system mistook a guardrail on the side of the road for an obstacle and applied the brakes forcefully. A jackknife ensued, and while a crash was averted, the commenter noted that occurrences like that present a major safety hazard. Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine went through the comments recently and says this one in particular stood out to him.
And basically, the trucker said, if there had been any vehicles near me, there would have been a really terrible crash that would have occurred because of that. Yeah. And it amazed me going through, we already know that we've mentioned many times that NHTSA has an investigation into false braking. But then reading through and hearing truck drivers talk about the specific instances where it happened and how scared they were that they did not have control of the truck they were driving.
And that is exactly what groups like OOIDA are worried about. The association says AEB technology is unproven and not ready for a big rollout, much less a mandate. We'll get into this story in a bit more detail later on in the show with Mark and Jamie Jones of Landline Magazine. The deadline for comments is September 5th. The jobs numbers for July are in. The Labor Department says the U.S. economy added 187,000 jobs last month. And while that's a bit lower than expected, the unemployment rate did dip to 3.5%. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says employment showed little change over the month in other major industries, including transportation. A Canadian truck driver is facing charges in the U.S. for trying to sneak 2,100 pounds of marijuana valued at $2 million into the country. Homeland Security says the suspect hid the weed in about 100 pounds of ketamine in boxes in his trailer, which was found by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol during a routine check at Peace Bridge in Buffalo. The truck manifest claimed he was hauling a shipment of frozen waffles to a grocery store in Georgia, but the document was reportedly fraudulent. 2 New York City lawmakers are behind a push to require speed limiters for the city's worst speeding offenders. The proposal targets drivers in the city who have at least 6 speed camera violations over a 12-month period, or drivers with at least 11 points on their driver's license within 18 months. Hit those margins, and the bill says you'd have to have a flexible speed limiter installed in your vehicle for 1 year. Affected vehicles would be allowed to go no faster than 5 miles per hour over a given speed limit. Right now, New York City speed cameras do not issue citations unless a vehicle is traveling at least 11 miles an hour over the posted speed. The state of Florida is one step closer to adding a toll road connecting Panama City to Interstate 10, although there are still quite a few steps to take. The Florida DOT has now finished up a study into the idea. They looked at a few things, such as whether a toll road was necessary and whether it's feasible. And officials with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise said yes to all of them. During a presentation on the study, officials said the toll road would help support the supply chain by connecting the port in Panama City, while also helping with emergency response. Next up, a conversation among regional planning councils and then more studies. Right now, the earliest the project would be done is 2035, but officials say it's likely to take longer. Electric truck maker Nikola is getting its third CEO in less than a year. Current chairman Steve Gursky is moving to the chief executive role for Michael Loscheller, who is leaving due to a family health matter. The transition comes amid a time of uncertainty for Nikola. The company reported a net loss of $217 million in the second quarter of this year. They're shifting money around to come up with capital. After doing that, Nikola hopes to ramp up production on its battery electric truck and a new longer-range version powered by a hydrogen fuel cell. And finally, we've got 2 new Guinness World Records to tell you about, and both would be pretty cool party tricks. The first comes out of India, where a martial artist recently smashed 273 walnuts with his forehead in 1 minute. That smashes the previous record by 19 walnuts that was set back in 2017. And the second world record, a Maryland woman set a new one by letting out a belch that was measured at 107 decibels. That's about as loud as a motorcycle at full throttle, enough to earn her the female title. Kimberly Winters said she prepared for her attempt by experimenting with different foods and beverages. She said she ended up having coffee and beer with her breakfast on the day of the attempt to guarantee the maximum belch volume. And that's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. A reminder that you can write a letter to your elected officials in Congress by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Next, Scott Thompson rounds up the news of the week with Jamie Jones and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine, and I'll discuss a new traffic signal system in Dallas with Jennifer Sanders of the North Texas Innovation Alliance. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Forget misaccuracy, weigh your truck on a cat scale.
When you weigh on a cat scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one, That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to Landline Now, where we are celebrating the end of yet another busy week in trucking news. And if it's been a busy week, that usually means Jamie Jones and Mark Schrimmer have cozied up to a chair here in Studio A to break down all that happened. And here they are. Jamie, Mark, good to see you.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, good to be here. If we're celebrating, did you bring any cake or anything? No?
Yeah, it's on the way. Yeah, yeah,
There will be
definitely.
snacks.
Yeah, sure. That's what they told you, I guess. So that's what got you in here. But yeah, let's start at the start of the week here with some big news out of Washington, D.C. FMCSA got this all started, as we all know, last year when they started floating this idea of mandating speed limiters in trucks. That process ongoing right now, and we should get more information here in the coming weeks, perhaps. But this is about opposition to that plan, which appears to be growing here. We've got a bill in the House already that was introduced earlier this year. Now we've got another bill, this one in the Senate, Mark, and this is it's a pretty big deal, really.
Yeah. So what we have is Senator Steve Daines, Republican from Montana, has introduced the Drive Act, and basically what that is, it's same out as the House bill by Representative Josh Perkeen out of Oklahoma, and what it would do is basically would just stop FMCSA from going forward with any sort of rule to try to mandate speed limiters on commercial motor vehicles. So now what we have is so we have a House bill. We have a Senate bill, and then also, if you remember, out of House committee and in the spending bill on the probes, there was also a provision to block FMCSA from using any funding towards a speed limiter mandate. So we have a lot of efforts, really kind of focused on this. Obviously, truck drivers have been very vocal about it. We've mentioned many times the first round of comments, more than 15,000. I've said it repeatedly, but if you go through and you actually read those comments, you're hard pressed to find anyone from a truck driver that liked the idea. 15,000 easily. Thousands and thousands and thousands of those were, come from the opposition, and now we're seeing, some lawmakers that are noticing that's what the public doesn't like this rulemaking, and so now we're seeing some bills that are getting some momentum.
Well, and it's an issue that clearly you can get lawmakers' attention on this if you'll spend a little bit of time walking them through the realities of what slow-moving trucks on the road means. It is a true safety issue. I mean, I don't know how many surveys, studies, things that come across our desk. We've probably had half a dozen this year alone already on distracted driving.
Yeah.
And so you've got these people on their phones doing whatever, not paying attention, and you're throwing a 15, 20 mile per hour speed differential out there. I mean, I cannot imagine what the number of rear-end collisions on trailers would be if this actually happened.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, but I mean, DOT puts out information that, trying to stop people from that distracted driving, which obviously we should do. But, they mention in the stats, if you look down at your phone for 1 second, you've traveled, the length of a football field and all of these things. But now you put these two together and you say, okay, we got a 15, 20 mile an hour speed difference between trucks and the speed limit or the flow of traffic. That 1 second looking down, it's not going to take long to be boom right in the back of a trailer.
Yeah, and to me, they've got to see that big picture. And we do. You can tell. I mean, we've got legislation now, so they're seeing that bigger picture of what it would truly mean. Because, people, too many times these proposals are driven by emotion. And, that big scary truck that just passed me because you were, I don't know, going slow, whatever. It's so rare that you actually see a truck speeding anyway because of fuel consumption and everything else. Yeah. It's just not a smart thing. But it just doesn't make sense for this to go forward. And I have, in all of the years of the speed limiter battle, and it's been decades on this front, never have we gotten the congressional support that we're getting this time around.
You used a word earlier, Mark, momentum. And I think that's important to underline and put in bold here because, as I mentioned, any week now, we are going to get more information from FMCSA about what they're thinking, what they're planning here as this thing kind of picks up speed. The time really to get in front of this, as we're seeing with this bill and the bill in the House, is now, I think, in terms of building up that momentum and building up that opposition. Because once FMCSA puts that next step in place, their momentum is kind of pushing them forward. So I think the key now, and we talk about this all the time, but the key now is to make sure that, that momentum does pick up speed with the Senate bill, with the House bill, and making sure that people are reaching out to them, not just through the comments to FMCSA, but to their elected representatives as well. And hopefully we'll see some of that here with this new bill in the Senate there. But it's really up to people out there to make those voices loud and clear about everything you're saying.
I think the big thing right now that it just, us being upfront and honest about this, where it's at. So far, this is all Republican support. And so that is the hurdle. But if they can convince
just a handful,
and I think where you're getting that is where you're going to have the best chances from some of the rural states, like Montana, for instance, with where Senator Daines is out of, because you're talking about these 2-lane roads. And the other part of it, as we talk about this issue, I know we've mentioned it, for months now, but I do think this eventually is going to really play out as a states' rights issue, because you had a lot of states like Montana that at one time had a different speed limit for trucks and for cars.
Yep.
And they've done studies, they've decided that's not the safest way, and they've made the speed limit the same for all. A lot of states have done that for various reasons, and like I said, because they believe it's safer that way to have, who would have thunk it? To have everybody driving at the same speed, that obviously that might be a safer thing to do. So that's the direction they've gone. If FMCSA is allowed to push this, regulation through, you have effectively taken that decision-making away from the states.
Yeah.
So I think that's the point. If you can get a handful of Democrats, whether in the House or the Senate,
or both,
to go, okay, that's not. It's not our place to do that, or for FMCSA to make that decision for the states. Then the momentum will really go strong.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so easy to get in touch with your
lawmaker.
fightingfortruckers.com.
Yeah, in harmony there. Look at that.
There you go.
On really quickly here to another wildly unpopular proposal, this one from NHTSA related to automatic emergency braking systems. The comment period's still open on this one, Mark.
Yeah.
You took some time to sift through all those comments, and you found some interesting feedback there.
Yeah. There's about a month left on this comment period. First off, this is on automatic emergency brake mandate on new commercial motor vehicles is what the proposal is. September 5th is when you need to get your comments in by. But so far, there's about 400 comments that have been filed either through NHTSA or through FMCSA, because this is a joint proposal.
Yeah, that's right.
So I found one that I mentioned in an article that I wrote recently was a truck driver, Kerry Moore, was just kind of providing this description, and there were a lot of comments like these, but this one in particular resonated with me. Just basically showing a near crash that almost happened because of automatic emergency braking, and was talking about the issues with snow and ice and just how this technology isn't perfected. It was talking about going on a curve, and the technology would pick up the guardrail as thinking that it's about to crash into it and would hard brake.
Yep.
And, the truck almost started to jackknife and almost lost control. And basically, the trucker said, if there had been any vehicles near me, there would have been a really terrible crash that would have occurred because of that.
Yeah.
And it amazed me going through, we already know that we've mentioned many times that NHTSA has an investigation into false braking. But then reading through and hearing truck drivers talk about the specific instances where it happened and how scared they were that they did not have control of the truck they were driving.
It's not just theory. It's actually happening out there.
Yeah. And, commenting doesn't sound sexy or effective. I know that people just really don't understand the weight that this carries. And these real world examples are exactly what the regulators need to see.
Absolutely.
So, and you can even upload video with them now. So you can attach files. So, the dash cam footage of things just like this is critical to stopping this mandate.
And everything we're saying here kind of highlights what OOIDA has been saying as well, that this technology not ready for prime time, not ready for a real world rollout like NHTSA and FMCSA are proposing here. So again, get those comments out. We've got a few minutes here, and I do want to take some time to talk about Bob Esler.
Yeah.
We're ending on a somber note here. Heavy hearts throughout the OOIDA family with the passing of board member Bob Esler. You had a beautiful obituary on landline.media celebrating his life, celebrating the man that Bob was. And Jamie, I know you have spent quite a bit of time with him over the years. I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about Bob and everything that he gave to OOIDA and everybody who loved him.
I mean, he was such a great guy, but I think to really kind of underscore exactly just how much of an influence he was on the association, on those of us who had the opportunity to work with him and around him. I was the general secretary for the board for 40 years. And so, I mean, here we are celebrating our 50th anniversary, and he was a member before he was the secretary. So, I mean, Bob was instrumental in the founding of this association. And I know at the spring board meeting, President Todd Spencer had the opportunity to give Bob a Lifetime Achievement Award. And in those early days, Todd talked about this and said that, if you needed truckers to show up, Bob would get them there. Mm-hmm. And if you needed something done, Bob would do it. I mean, he was clearly the go-to guy in those early days, and he never stopped being that guy. Mm-hmm. If they ever needed Bob to do anything, Bob did it. I mean, he was traveling up until June, I know, went to HEHS out in Reno and accepted an award there. There's not enough awards in the world to really, accurately depict how influential he was and how passionate he was about protecting truck drivers' rights and what this association can do for truckers. And it was just so easy to spend time around him and get charged up and into that fight because he never let that passion down. But the one story that the one funny story, okay, so great guy, right? Love Bob. So in the early days when Jim Johnston was stuck here at headquarters, getting a little bored, a little weary with the desk, Bob would show up in the parking lot with a load on his trailer looking, quote, for a co-driver.
Let's get out of here.
And Jim would grab his go bag and just be sneaking out the front door. See y'all later.
Yeah.
So he was the go-to guy for everything.
Absolutely. Yes. Our condolences, obviously, to Bob's family and everyone whose lives he touched over the many years that he was, as you said, instrumental in building OOIDA up. I know a great number of people will miss him. Jamie, Mark, a pleasure as always. We appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thanks for listening as well. But do stick around. We've got more Landline Now right around the corner.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. course, I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
Landline now. Welcome back. How would you like to be driving your truck through a crowded urban area and never hit a red light, or at least avoid most of them? It could happen in Texas thanks to what's called the Freight Vehicle Optimization Program. The program, which is being created under the North Texas Innovation Alliance, is designed to help make that a reality for truckers who take part. I talked recently with Jennifer Sanders, Executive Director of the Alliance, about the program and how it would work.
So really the goal of the freight optimization program is to take key freight corridors in the North Texas area and be able to have the signals talk to the trucks so that trucks have to stop at less red lights, saving fuel and time and emissions as well. So it's really meant to have more greens than reds.
I'm wondering if you can walk us through what the experience would be like for a trucker using this system. I mean, they're driving down the street. What essentially happens?
So a couple of different ways that the program would support the drivers as they go about their day. So one is, through the communication, the system will know the timing of the signals, the usual timing, so they can communicate with the truck driver. You've got this much time to hit this green light. We recommend this speed in order to get through the green versus needing to stop, or time to start stopping because the light is currently red. But really, the goal is to train the traffic lights, if you will, so that there's a prioritization impact, so that the trucks would experience more green lights through extended signal times.
Okay. What is needed on the truck and the stoplight in order for this to work? I mean, can you explain that in layman's terms?
I can sure try. So the goal of the system is it's simple from a technology or a use perspective, and so really what the truck needs is either there is an app called the EcoDrive app, which can just be turned on, and that's what communicates with the traffic signals. Also, if there's an existing kind of GPS system in the truck, that can be, permissions can be allowed for that to talk to the signal. And just to be clear, no data is ever stored. There's no personal information attached. It's really just to help communicate with the traffic signal that the truck is coming and how can we help it get through the light.
Obviously, you can't do the entire North Texas area and all the stoplights there. What parts of the area are going to be included in the project?
So the priority is jurisdictions. Obviously with signals that are on key freight corridors, so knowing where the main distribution hubs are and what those routes are to get to the highway. So there's a prioritization there, and working with between 12 and 15 jurisdictions is the initial kind of geographic reach throughout North Texas. And then we are, as many trucks that would like to participate are certainly welcomed.
Okay. When do you anticipate this starting to be in use?
So the first jurisdictions are currently being set up now, and so the thought is later in 2023 the system will be up and running and on the road, if you will.
What do you see as the primary benefits for the trucker and for the general public?
I think for the driver, the ability to get through routes faster through not having to start and stop, on their way is a huge benefit. We know that margins and increased fuel costs, just create a strain that we hope will be alleviated through the program. The projections right now are that for every 5,000 freight stops, $1,500 in fuel and operational costs will be saved, including 4 miles per gallon in fuel efficiency, and a number of other benefits, including travel time saved. So what we really hope is it's a smoother quality of trip, shortened time, and all things that come along with it, wear and tear on brakes and whatnot over time, we think is going to be a benefit. And I think for the public as well, the ability to, we often hear gosh, I keep getting stopped behind the truck, and, potential emissions related to idling and things of that nature. But we think that the ride will be smoother for everyone on the road.
How does an individual trucker take part in this?
So it's really meant to be simple. So the website for the program is freepriority.com. And through there, a driver can sign up directly to participate and will be contacted to get set up by a member of the team.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add or that maybe I didn't ask about that I should have?
I think the major piece is there's been that perception that, the goal is, we need to go, straight to the UPSs and large companies, but really, the goal is for independent, smaller operators to be able to benefit from this as well, in equal measure. So I would just really emphasize that we'd like the individuals operating their truck to participate and benefit as much as at the fleet level.
That was Jennifer Sanders, Executive Director of the North Texas Innovation Alliance, talking about a program that would help truckers stop at fewer traffic signals in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We don't have a bridge in Brooklyn we'd like to sell you, but in Iowa, you can adopt, relocate, and use a historic bridge. The Boone River Bridge, built in 1912, and the Fort Atkinson Bridge, built in 1892, are both available for as little as the cost of relocation and safely putting the bridge in place. Brennan Dolan is the Cultural Resources Team Lead for the Iowa Department of Transportation.
Both of those bridges are available. As you can probably guess from the fact that that's Iowa DOT URL, those bridges are owned by counties. Counties other branch of government from the Department of Transportation itself. So Winneshiek County owns the Fort Atkinson Bridge and Boone County owns the Boone River Bridge. And basically Wright County owns the Boone River Bridge, but both of those entities had made those bridges available for adoption through the website. So over the years, our website has kind of served as a kind of a research point for someone looking for a bridge or a historic bridge that they could possibly repurpose, maybe for a recreational trail or a rail-to-trail conversion. We have had a small number of bridges salvaged by private individuals over the years. So the DOT uses the website basically as kind of a touch point where if we know a bridge is not in service, or a city or a county, and sometimes the DOT also, if we know of a bridge that has the ability to be repurposed, then we'll put it out on the website.
What is special about these bridges in particular?
Both of these bridges have been determined eligible and listed to the National Register of Historic Places. So in either case, they've got both of these are listed under criterion C. So they've got some unique engineering. They represent kind of something outstanding or unusual with regard to how they were designed and constructed. So that can also be kind of a gateway for an entity wanting to repurpose a bridge to kind of provide a stepping stone into some grant funding also. So, but I should say with regard to the website, not all of the bridges that have been up there over the years are eligible for the National Register. When it comes to repurposing bridges, size matters. And what I mean when I say that is the smaller the bridge, kind of the easier it is to move and to repurpose it. So, if we have a county or a city who's looking to get rid of a bridge or they want to make one available, we will, if we can help them out, we will.
Why do you put bridges up for adoption rather than demolish them or some other method of removing them?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. That historical significance is a big one. I mentioned both these bridges are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, so that's the nation's official registry of places that encapsulate some significant aspect of history. It might be an event. It might be connected to an individual. We have a couple of those bridges. James Barney Marsh was a pretty famous bridge engineer who worked in the state. There's other examples of those. Might be connected to unique design engineering work of a master. So there's that historic piece, but then there's also a sustainability piece. If these assets, if this infrastructure has more use life in it, then it makes good sense to get that out of the bridge. So there's that. And then sometimes, depending on the use, depending on the relocation, it can be a pretty economically opportune avenue for like a conservation group to reuse a bridge versus paying for a brand new one. So it kind of depends on the situation. They're always unique. They're as unique as the bridges are themselves. But there can be a number of reasons why it can make sense to look at repurposing an existing bridge.
Have you had successful bridge adoptions before?
We have had a few examples. The most recent one I can think of was actually a private entity. We had a 3-span bridge in the southwest corner of the state where we had put it up for adoption, hadn't received anything, and the county had opted to move forward with replacement. And then during construction, one of the spans was actually salvaged and adopted by a nearby landowner. So it's not a big numbers, high success story, but there are examples of bridges being adopted and reused. There's some really good ones from some of our neighboring states too.
Okay. How do you, or what is required of someone to adopt one of these bridges?
That is oftentimes as unique as the bridges are themselves. So these two examples that we're talking about, Fort Atkinson and Boone River, as I mentioned, they are owned by the counties that they're within right now. So the sale or the adoption of those bridges would flow through the County Board of Supervisors. Sometimes counties propose to sell them for as little as $1. Sometimes they can be relocated just by placing it on a flatbed trailer. Sometimes they have to be deconstructed. Sometimes it's kind of a hybrid of both of those options. I did entertain a discussion with a trail group, I think it was just a couple years ago, where they kind of looked into floating a span of a bridge along a major waterway using some barges. So just about any way you can imagine moving a truss bridge. We've had some discussion over the years about using just about every means possible. And then kind of famously in Iowa, a few years ago, the Hale Bridge over in Jones County was relocated with the assistance of the National Guard. And if you Google that, I think there's even some video out on YouTube still of the National Guard using Chinook helicopters flying some smaller bowstring truss spans from one location in the county to another location in the county. So in terms of what's involved, it can be a lot depending on the size and the distance, and it can be comparatively little, if we're just going to the neighboring farm or something like that.
Well, those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe I didn't ask about that you think I should have?
Local bridges, I think, oftentimes can be very endearing to particular communities, and they can give some pretty significant identity to a local community. So there's one county in Iowa, Crawford County. They've done a really, really good job of repurposing some of their really quite rare bowstring arch truss bridges. So if you're looking for kind of a example of how some of these bridges have been reused, I would check out some of the work that Crawford County Secondary Roads Department has done to repurpose some of their historic bridges around the county.
Brennan Dolan, Cultural Resources Team Lead for the Iowa Department of Transportation. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now, welcome back. You might remember that weird story out of Canada this week about that driver who crashed her truck, failed a DUI, and got fired, only to have her job reinstated by an arbitrator. We had lots of questions about what happened there, and fortunately we've got someone in the building who has maybe some of the answers, all the answers. It's a very complicated story here, but Felisa McCannon is going to help us out here. She is the supervisor of OOIDA's Drug and Alcohol Consortium, CMCI, and here she is. Felisa, good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you.
So this is a weird story. We were just talking here before we, turned on the mics just about how weird this story is and how many questions it raises because it's confusing. It doesn't make sense to pretty much anybody who hears it. And I did a quick job there recapping this, but I should add that driver admitted to drinking at least 9 beers before crashing her truck and again, getting this DUI. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. But as far as the details go, we're still kind of sifting through all of this. But I am curious, your initial reaction, and I think I'm the one who kind of tipped you off to this story here, your initial reaction to when you read it and kind of started going through the stories about what did happen.
Yeah, it's really kind of unbelievable that this driver made it at least 7 hours. It's about a 7-hour trip from Montreal down to Pennsylvania. Now, of course, we don't know in Pennsylvania where she was headed to. She has this accident. She's 9 beers in when she has the accident. Yeah. There is one article that says that, she had stopped twice, about a 6-pack at each location. We don't know where the last 3 beers are, so we don't know at what point. But regardless, 9 beers, driving a truck and trailer is a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And not to say it's illegal to do.
Yeah, illegal no matter where you do it and no matter what you're driving, but especially a commercial truck and especially while on the job, which brings us to the confusing part of this because, this wouldn't be a story, obviously, if she had just crashed her truck, got a DUI, and got fired. But we've got this arbitrator who listened to the case and decided that the driver should get her job back in Canada, despite all of that. And this has to do with Canadian law, which, again, is also confusing. But the gist of this is that in Canada, alcoholism, which she says that she suffers from and had a week after she got fired, is a disability in Canada, right? That's
correct.
Kind of the rub of all of this in terms of why she got her job back.
Yes, those Canadian arbitrators are fighting for her job back because, of course, you cannot fire somebody for a disability. And in Canada, alcoholism is considered a disability according to the Canadian Human Rights Act.
Right.
And from what I have read, the day after the accident, she went and sought help for her alcoholism and then informs the company a week after the accident that she is an alcoholic and she's seeking help for that. And then along comes the arbitrator to say, oh, wait a second, you can't be terminated. This company cannot terminate you for that. That's a disability.
Yeah.
Now, would that have changed had the accident injured or even killed somebody?
Yeah.
Would the Canadian arbitrator be fighting for her job back? Now, one other thing that we're not clear on is what does it mean that she gets her job back?
Right. Yes.
It sounds like through information that I've read, the driver is clearly just wanting to be able to have a breathalyzer test before she starts the truck.
Right. Reasonable accommodations, which is what the arbitrator, I think, came up with, that the trucking company, quote unquote, should have made accommodations for this disability. Now, they also didn't know about the alcoholism before the crash. So the question becomes, how were they, how are they supposed to know? Yeah, how were they supposed to see the future and know that this was going to be an issue or was an issue if they didn't have any means of that? You raise an interesting question there because we're still kind of trying to figure out here on our end what exactly happened and what this does mean. Because you raise the question, is this woman behind the wheel right now as we speak of a commercial truck back on the job, doing your job with that reasonable accommodation, quote unquote, of a breathalyzer or whatnot. We don't know that answer. And we don't know, too, we're trying to figure out as well whether that means she can still cross into the U.S. because, if this was a U.S. case only, this driver, she would be basically at determination, obviously being fired, facing charges, of course, and then her trucking future would be very much in doubt because there would be a process that she would have to go through,
yes.
Right?
Had this been in the U.S. and a citation was issued, a drug test or an alcohol test was failed, she would have to go into what FMCSA considers an SAP program, which means she would have to seek out a substance abuse counselor. And from there, that counselor would work with her on a specific program designed for her. And then they would have to take a return to duty test. Once they pass that return to duty test, they can get back out on the road. But in this case, most likely she would have been on this process for at least a year, where she would have at least 6 random alcohol tests throughout that year. And she would be prohibited from, or it would all be reported into the clearinghouse as she is in the SAP program and she's under monitoring.
Yeah. Yeah. Again.
So why doesn't that affect her here?
Exactly. And that's the thing that, again, we're trying to figure this out and we're working to get more answers on this, but it doesn't make logical sense to everybody I've talked to. Here's the story. It says, what? That makes no sense whatsoever. I do want to take some time, though, to end here with some helpful advice because this is a good reminder that, again, don't drink and drive. Definitely don't drink and drive, when you're on the job in a commercial truck, because that's going to have a whole list of other ramifications, the worst of which would be killing or hurting somebody, obviously, very badly. But a reminder here that you can't even have an unopened can of beer or an unopened bottle of anything, alcohol, in the cab whatsoever at any time. Right? Period.
That is correct.
That's it.
Period.
Yeah.
If you've dropped your load off and you're on your way home and you stop by a convenience store because you want to have a beer after work, you can't have that beer in the cab.
Yeah. Period. It's that simple.
Yeah. You need to go home, drop off your truck, get into another vehicle, and you even still have to wait 2 hours after you're home before you can have alcohol.
And the penalty for having, again, let's say you have 1 can of beer, right? That's unopened. It's in the cab. It's in a fridge you got out in the back or what have you. The penalty for that, I mean, we're talking what, fines?
Fines, citations.
Like?
Yeah, it would be all of that. Now, they wouldn't have to do, they may have to be sent in for a breath alcohol test, which they would pass, but it's still something that they can receive a citation for.
Citation, and then you got to go through the hassle of maybe going to that test and
yes.
It just, yeah. Again, this case, this Canadian truck driver, we're, again, as I said, we're still trying to figure out the answers here and reaching out to people and looking for the information. But I did want to talk about it with you because obviously you deal with this on an everyday basis at CMCI, and it's just such a weird case. And I know people are talking about it out there. So we wanted to talk to you and get some answers. And again, remind people out there that, hey, don't do this. Don't do this, especially.
Don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive, and be smart about the decisions you're making out there because they could very well have ramifications, not just for your professional career, but we're talking criminal charges and on down the line. So, Felisa, we will hopefully talk to you again when we do get more information and we can kind of sort out all the details here because it is an interesting case and one that has people talking, and we appreciate you coming by and talking with us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome of this is and how this affects, drivers that are crossing over the border and how it affects, how we view that in the future.
For sure. To be continued. That is our show for today. We thank you for listening and hope you'll check us out again soon. Take care and drive safe out there.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
Chrome. And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together, we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.